I had two thoughts walking into Frankenstein. The first was, oh my god, this is one of the best directors adapting one of my favorite books. That is a perfect fit of director and material. And the other thought I had was, well, is that too obvious? Is it too obvious that Guillermo del Toro is making a Frankenstein movie, that it's going to feel unimpressive, that it's going to feel a little by the numbers, that it's going to lose an element of specialness to it? And I am just so glad to say the following. Yes, this movie is an obvious thing for Guillermo del Toro to make. This is a source material that is right up his alley. And no, that doesn't make the film any less special. I loved and adored Frankenstein. This is a great movie that I am so excited to get to dive into and talk about today. I was just blown away by this movie. I think it is literally a near masterpiece of adaptation. I think the way that this film chooses to adapt Mary Shelley's book is interesting, and I found it so cool. So I am so pumped to talk about what I loved about Frankenstein and where the specialness lies in what Guillermo del Toro does. I personally believe Frankenstein is one of Guillermo del Toro's best films, and what I love about this movie, and what is very clear, is that it is an artist who clearly loves this story. He loves the source material of Frankenstein in all iterations, in books, in film. He loves it all. And he knows the history of its appearances in cinema. And he isn't afraid to do his own spin on it. That's what made me very excited. He doesn't have to follow all the rules that have come before. He is willing to take it his own direction. He creates the spirit of the novel. He carries the themes, the emotional truth of Mary Shelley's book, while offering a new voice to make his own imprint to it. That's when I think adaptation works best, when you are able to capture the truths of the source material while still making it something your own. And that's what Guillermo del Toro does so successfully. Adaptation is hard and often goes so wrong. It loses the soul of the novel, it loses the themes, and becomes style without substance. As a filmmaker, Del Toro has always had an interest in adaptation and has always had a good eye for it. Whether it's his Hellboys, whether it's him taking The Shape of Water, which feels slightly based off the creature of the Black Lagoon, whether it is him taking Nightmare Alley, a 1940s noir film, and making his own spin on it. He is able to keep the frameworks, the themes, and the lessons of those source materials alive while adding a fundamentally new flavor to it. This in Frankenstein still keeps the ideas of this being a story of a man's hubris, what it means to be alive and be viewed with humanity. It is still a movie about parenthood and obsession. It is a fear of the unpreventable in death. It is an observation of the natural world. These are all core themes within Mary Shelley's novel. Guillermo del Toro loses none of it in this adaptation. Rather, he has his own curiosity and musings of these thematic explorations, so he's able to do his own spin on it. It allows for far richer subtext and agency given to some characters. This is most explored with the character of Elizabeth, played by Mia Goth. I love how Del Toro reinvents this character and reinterpretates her relationship with Victor and the monster. Specifically, this combative element is really seen in her relationship with Victor, where she is somebody that sees through the persona, that she sees the ego of him, and she also understands the monster. I think Mia Goth gives a lovely performance in Frankenstein. I think it is a pretty radical shift of a character and allowing this character a little bit more agency, as giving her a bit of a dynamic, more to play with the Victor, changing the origin stories, if you will, in some ways. I think it made for an interesting subtext to this film that wasn't always there. And I think what Guillermo del Toro also does is he makes a very specific choice to further complicate this Elizabeth and Victor relationship, which is he infuses this Freudian quality to the film, which adds to the thematic weight of Victor seeking the secret of life after death as a result of his mother's own death. This aspect of Frankenstein really clicked with me, and I think Mia Goth is able to do a lot in this role. Another element that just really clicked with me was the changes to Victor's early life. In the novel, where his family is far more loving, here his father is portrayed as far crueler. He is far more demanding. He is far more distant of a character. One of the reasons this element really works is because Del Toro puts heavy emphasis on the father-son dynamic of this story and really fleshes it out in really cool ways in this movie. What I've loved about this is a movie exploring the sins of fatherhood and the failures of generations. Why it worked for me is it made Victor more human in his failures and his hubris to his creation. He fails the same way his own father failed him. Which brings us to the Oscar Isaac performance as the titular Victor Frankenstein. I gotta be honest, I thought Oscar Isaac was sensational in this. He floored me as Victor. He was nothing short of incredible. What I loved about his portrayal was his obsession and mania. He is so lost in his madness, yet he's still Oscar Isaac. That's one of the best qualities about this performance, is all of the charisma is still there. All of the reasons Oscar Isaac is great to watch on screen, it is there, the charm, and it's especially there for the first half of the movie. One of my favorite scenes in this film is this moment where we have Oscar Isaac opposite Mia Goth in a confessional booth. That makes you fully understand who Victor Frankenstein is, his own understanding of himself. It adds also a fun little religious subtext to this film, which is obviously there in the novel as well. But the way that it communicates this, I found it nonetheless very effective, and it's a very memorable scene. Of course, with Del Toro, so much of the films are within the production design, what he brings to life on the screen. It is something he has always done incredibly throughout his entire career. And in Frankenstein, I thought it was just a masterclass of that. Production design, costuming, creature design, it's superb, especially in the first half of this film. Again, when we're in Frankenstein's lab and every scene that revolves around it, it's just so detailed. There is so much to look at. I loved how it looked. The lab is just all just fully thought out. It really brings you into the mind of Victor Frankenstein, of this world. And of course, there's the creature design. I am actually quite curious about how people are going to react to the creature design. I had some mixed feelings about it. I want to just say, first off, it is a brilliant design in the sense of how it is costumed, how the makeup is done. I have no complaints on the actual quality of the work being done. I will admit, personally, I was a little underwhelmed with the actual look that they gave him. I think it is probably fairly true to the novel, but I didn't really click with it all the way. Again, that is not to say that it is bad. It's still really well done in this film. And the reason it specifically works is the man behind the makeup, which is Jacob Elordi, his portrayal of the monster. I've always been a fan of Jacob Elordi's. I've thought he's been great in past films like Saltburn and Priscilla. This is another level of greatness that Elordi hits as the monster, which is that he is giving such a credible performance in this. I thought it was such a poignant, such a beautiful portrayal from Elordi to capture the humanity and pain. I think it is a far more sympathetic understanding of the monster. Now, some people are going to have criticisms towards this approach, especially Del Toro choosing to, I wouldn't say sanitize the monster, but make it a far more empathetic creature. Some of the violence that we see in the novel regarding this monster just really isn't in here. I've seen some people accuse Del Toro of loving his monsters too much. I certainly understand that criticism. for what this film is trying to accomplish, and specifically with this role of fatherhood within it, I actually think this approach was really nice, really delicately handled in it. So I personally appreciated it. But I think one of the reasons I appreciated it was how good Elordi was in this role as this monster, what he is able to do as this creature, not really understanding his life. And again, the nature versus nurture. Of course, any key scene within a Frankenstein movie is the moment where Frankenstein gets to learn, where he gets to have relationships with other people besides Victor. The blind man is, of course, something we've seen adapted multiple times within Frankenstein stories. I think this one does it very well. I've seen some complaints about the CGI wolves that are used in this scene. I will admit some of the third act CGI doesn't fully click when we are in nature. I didn't mind it, but again, I did notice it and point it out while watching this film, so I do think it is worth discussing. But everything Elordi does in this scene, all the sympathetic qualities that you feel to him, the dynamic that he has with other relationships, again, I think he is very interestingly paired off of the Mia Goth Elizabeth character. Their dynamic is unique in this movie. I thought it was also quite exceptional in this movie. And specifically, the reason this movie works is because of the Oscar Isaac, Jacob Elordi relationship in this movie. The at awe of first of Victor Frankenstein, of his creature, and then of course the growing horror of it. What I loved about this choice in this film is we see how Victor treats the creature and how damaging that is. Again, it's this idea of the sins of fatherhood. I thought it was very cleverly explored in this film. Now, I will say some people are going to accuse this film of lacking subtext, so much so that at one point one of the characters yells at Victor Frankenstein, "You are the monster." I will personally say it didn't bother me, but it is in this film. There is scenes like that that really lack subtext, and it is kind of just telling you what this movie is about. Victor Frankenstein is the monster, like quite literally said in this movie. I understand the frustration towards that. Honestly, I thought it was a bit overblown of how much that is within the film. It never bothered me, but again, I understand why it is going to bother some people. But ultimately, I was just along for the journey, the way that this film unfolds, the way that it unfolds Victor's story, and then the monster's story, and then, of course, the really big payoff that the third act has of this story. I just think Del Toro is somebody who is a master of adaptation, and I think Frankenstein just showcases how good this is and how hard it is to do so. The fact that I found it to keep the language of Mary Shelley's novel, which is also something that's really hard in adaptation, which is to keep the way people talk to really feel tonally of the same as Mary Shelley. I just found it all a worthy cause that Del Toro sought to make, and I think it is well executed in this film. I quite loved it. It's one of my favorite films of the year, and Frankenstein is a huge recommendation from me. Check it out. It is now streaming on Netflix. If you get the chance to see it in theaters, go see it in theaters. You would be missing out so much if you don't see it in theaters. But regardless, it will be a great watch however you can consume it. This is so worth your time. It is one of the best movies of the year. I hope to see it get a lot of Oscar nominations. We'll talk about that soon in the near future. I am rooting for Elordi specifically to get the Best Supporting Performance nod. But with that all said, Frankenstein, 4.5 out of 5 stars for Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.